My world used to be so simple, so full of love. My father and I, we were a unit. We shared everything. His laughter filled our home, and his strong arms always made me feel safe. I never doubted our bond. It was the kind of love that felt unbreakable, a quiet promise whispered between us every day. I thought nothing could ever change that. Then Evelyn arrived. She was beautiful, with a smile that seemed to light up the room. My father was smitten. I remember feeling a mix of curiosity and a tiny bit of worry. She was kind, almost too kind, and she spoke softly. I wanted to like her. I truly did. I wanted my father to be happy, even if it meant sharing him. Evelyn seemed supportive at first. She would praise my father's decisions and compliment my own small achievements. She listened intently when I spoke. I thought, maybe this won't be so bad after all. Maybe she could be a true part of our family, a new friend even. I tried to push away any doubts. I wanted to believe in her goodness. But then small things started. Evelyn once told my father I had mentioned being tired of our old family traditions, which was not true at all. I remembered saying I was tired, but not of the traditions. It was a tiny twist, a small lie, almost harmless. I brushed it off. It was probably just a misunderstanding, I told myself. We were all adjusting. I kept telling myself I was overthinking. Adjusting to a new person in our home was bound to have bumps. I tried to ignore the little moments that felt off. Her subtle criticisms of my choices, always delivered with a sweet smile, felt like tiny pinpricks. I told myself it was just her way, that she meant no harm. I wanted to see the best in her. Slowly, my father started to echo Evelyn's opinions. He began to talk about things he never cared about before, using phrases that sounded just like hers. He spoke about needing more order in the house or how certain things were outdated. These were not his words, not his thoughts. I felt a chill. It was like watching a subtle change, a quiet shift in him. I tried hard to connect with Evelyn. I offered to help her with things, suggested we go out for coffee. Each time she would agree, but her answers were always vague. She would say maybe next week or I'm a bit busy. Her polite refusals felt like a wall. It was not outright rejection, but a soft push away over and over again. It hurt more than a direct no. One evening, I made a joke about a silly habit my father had. Evelyn was there. Later, my father pulled me aside, his face serious. He said Evelyn told him I was disrespectful and unappreciative. My stomach dropped. I tried to explain it was a joke, a loving tease. He just shook his head. Evelyn had twisted my words, and he believed her. A small crack appeared in our bond. I started to feel a strange, cold distance growing between my father and me. He was still there, but not fully. His focus had shifted. Then Evelyn began to talk about having her own child with him. She spoke of a fresh start for their new family. She said it often, almost as if she was planting a seed, making it sound like a natural, necessary step. I listened, my heart sinking. The words fresh start echoed in my mind. It felt like a subtle erasure of everything that came before, everything that was me. I felt a chilling premonition, a cold dread settled deep in my bones. I knew with a certainty that made my stomach churn that my cherished family dynamic, the one I had always known, was about to change. And not for the better. One evening, Evelyn gathered us in the living room. Her smile was wide, almost too bright. Then she announced her pregnancy. My father's face lit up with a joy I hadn't seen in a long time, a joy that seemed to wrap only around her. I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. The focus of our home and my father's attention shifted completely in that moment. It was no longer just about us. Small things became big things. I remember Evelyn telling my father I had forgotten to turn off the lights in the garage, when I clearly remembered doing so. My father just sighed, accepting her word. I started to second-guess myself, checking and rechecking everything. Did I really forget? Was I going crazy? Her subtle accusations made me doubt my own mind, my own memories. It was a dizzying feeling. My father's once unwavering affection began to feel distant. Our easy conversations became strained. He would spend more time with Evelyn, talking about the baby, planning their future. When I tried to share something, his eyes would drift, his answers short. It felt like I was an afterthought, a piece of old furniture in a newly decorated room. The warmth that used to connect us was fading. I overheard Evelyn telling my father about a small mistake I made years ago, blowing it up into a grand failure. She said I was always careless or couldn't be trusted with important things. My heart ached hearing her twist my past. He listened, nodding, his expression serious. It felt like she was carefully planting seeds of doubt, one by one, watching them grow into a thick wall between us. I decided to confront Evelyn directly. I calmly asked her why she was saying those things about me. She looked surprised, then her eyes softened. She said she was only concerned for my well-being and just wanted to help. Later, I heard her telling my father I was overly sensitive and jealous of her happiness. My attempts to clear the air only made me look worse. It was a trap, expertly laid. Spending one-on-one time with my father became nearly impossible. If I tried to talk to him, Evelyn would suddenly need his help with something, or she would join our conversation and steer it away from me. It wasn't obvious, but it happened every time. I felt like I was constantly being pushed to the periphery, a ghost in my own home. The quiet moments we once shared were gone. The constant gaslighting started to wear me down. I found myself questioning everything. Was I truly forgetful? Was I too sensitive? Was I seeing things that weren't there? My own reality felt shaky, like a house built on shifting sand. I would lie awake at night, replaying conversations, trying to find the truth. The world around me felt distorted, and I felt like I was losing my grip. Then came the open criticism. My father started telling me I was irresponsible or not thinking clearly. The words were Evelyn's. The tone was sharper than his usual gentle voice. It was like hearing her voice through him. Each word was a blow. It wasn't just my perception he was invalidating, but my very character. I felt a deep, chilling dread as I realized he truly believed her. One afternoon, I found an old email Evelyn had sent to my father. It was about a trip I had planned, and she had completely misrepresented my intentions, making it sound selfish and reckless. The truth was in black and white, undeniable. My heart pounded. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a deliberate, calculated lie. A cold anger, unlike anything I had felt before, began to simmer within me. The day Evelyn's child was born, my world shifted irrevocably. My father's joy was absolute, all-encompassing. He held the baby, a new beginning for him, for them. I stood in the doorway, watching, feeling like an outsider in my own family. The space I once occupied in his heart, the one I had cherished, felt completely erased. I knew then that my fight was just beginning, a desperate battle for a place that no longer seemed to exist. The new baby, Evelyn's child, became the sun around which my father's world now revolved. He held the tiny bundle with such tenderness, a look of absolute adoration on his face. Every conversation, every plan, every thought seemed to be about this new life. I stood by, feeling like a shadow, a forgotten piece of furniture in a home that no longer felt like mine. My heart ached with a strange mix of sadness and a growing sense of being utterly replaced. My place in the house quickly changed. I was no longer part of the easy conversations or the shared jokes. Evelyn would often ask me to do something just as my father started talking to me, or she would simply interrupt, steering his attention away. I felt like an inconvenience, an unwanted guest in my own home. My voice seemed to fade into the background, unheard, unseen. It was a subtle, constant push to the edges of their new family circle. Evelyn's attacks grew more direct, though still clever enough to be twisted. One afternoon, she loudly wondered if I was truly committed to helping with an upcoming family event, implying I was unreliable. My father was nearby, and I saw him glance at me. When I tried to defend myself, she'd quickly say, "Oh, I'm just expressing concern, dear," making me sound overly sensitive. Her words were like tiny needles, each one pricking at my reputation. Then came the big accusations. Evelyn told my father I had spread rumors about his business dealings, which was a complete fabrication. She claimed I was undermining him, even jeopardizing his reputation. My father's face was stern when he confronted me. He didn't listen to my frantic denials. It felt like she was systematically dismantling my character, brick by brick, not just in his eyes, but potentially to others who might hear her lies. I tried desperately to make my father understand. I laid out the facts, calmly, logically, showing him why Evelyn's stories couldn't be true. But he just looked at me with a chilling skepticism, his eyes cold and distant. He dismissed my words, sometimes with a wave of his hand, sometimes with a sharp, angry tone I had never heard directed at me before. It was like talking to a wall built by Evelyn's lies. No matter what, my father consistently sided with Evelyn. Even when I presented clear evidence, even when her stories contradicted themselves, he would defend her, often with a "she wouldn't lie," a leaner, or "you're just being difficult." It was a crushing realization. His trust in her was absolute, his belief in me completely shattered. I felt an overwhelming sense of abandonment, watching him choose her over me every single time. I reached out to my Aunt Carol, someone who had known my father forever. I told her everything, the gaslighting, the accusations, his growing distance. She listened, her face etched with shock and concern. "I don't recognize him, Alina," she whispered. "He's changed so much." Her words confirmed my deepest fear. It wasn't just me seeing things. My father, the man I knew, was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. The holiday dinner was a painful example. I arrived, expecting to join the family, but my usual seat was taken, and I was directed to a small, awkward chair at the very end of the table. Conversations flowed around me, but I was never truly included. I felt deeply unwelcome, an uncomfortable presence rather than a cherished family member. My father barely looked at me, his attention solely on Evelyn and their new child. Then came the ultimate blow. I overheard my father and Evelyn discussing updating the will. Later, a close family friend, who was also a lawyer, quietly hinted that significant family assets and future inheritances were being systematically diverted away from me and towards Evelyn's child. It was a calculated act, a complete erasure of my future, my legacy. The betrayal was so profound, it stole my breath away. Standing there, looking out at the world, a gut-wrenching realization washed over me. The man who was my father, the one who had loved me unconditionally, was gone. He was a completely alien presence, a stranger shaped by Evelyn's insidious lies. He had abandoned me, accepted a fabricated reality, and allowed my life to be dismantled. The grief was overwhelming, but a cold resolve began to settle within me. I knew then that I had to fight, not just for my past, but for a future that was stolen. The feeling of utter betrayal had settled deep within me, but it also ignited a spark. I could not just let Evelyn win. I had to fight back, not with anger, but with truth. I decided then that I would gather every single piece of evidence I could find. My father deserved to know the truth, even if he refused to see it. I would systematically expose her lies, no matter how long it took. This was my last stand. I started small. I began recording casual conversations on my phone, hoping to catch Evelyn twisting words. I dug through old emails, searching for any inconsistencies or outright fabrications. I kept a detailed journal, noting every instance of gaslighting, every subtle manipulation. It felt like I was building a case, piece by painstaking piece. My heart pounded with a mix of fear and grim determination with each new discovery. I was becoming a detective in my own home. Armed with a growing collection of evidence, I decided to confront Evelyn directly, hoping to shock her into revealing herself. I calmly presented a clear example of her deceit. Her eyes widened, then filled with tears. She immediately turned to my father, who had entered the room, sobbing about my false accusations and jealousy. She played the victim perfectly, and my father, without a moment's hesitation, moved to comfort her. My stomach dropped. I had walked right into her trap. Despite the setback, I pressed on. I compiled all my findings into a thick dossier, printed emails, recorded snippets, detailed journal entries. I presented it to my father, my hands trembling slightly. "Please, Dad," I pleaded, "just look at this." It's all here. I laid out the irrefutable evidence of Evelyn's calculated lies and manipulation, hoping that seeing it all together would finally break through the wall she had built around him. I truly believed the truth would set him free. His reaction was a punch to my gut. He barely glanced at the papers. His eyes were cold, almost angry. "Alina, this is crazy," he said, his voice flat. "You're obsessed. Evelyn would never do these things. You're imagining things, making a mountain out of a molehill." He defended her, dismissed my evidence, and then accused me of being unhinged. My heart shattered. The man I knew, the one who always listened, was truly gone. Then came the words I had always dreaded, the ultimate abandonment. My father looked at me, his face devoid of warmth. "I think it's clear you don't belong here anymore, Alina," he stated, his voice devoid of emotion. "You are no longer considered my daughter, or part of this family." The words hung in the air, cold and heavy. It was a formal declaration, a complete erasure of our shared past. I felt a physical pain, as if my very existence was being denied. The next few days were a blur of legal threats. Evelyn, with my father's full backing, initiated formal actions to sever all ties. Letters from lawyers arrived, demanding I cease contact, threatening restraining orders if I persisted. They wanted to make sure I was completely cut off, not just emotionally, but legally. It was a chilling display of their power, a ruthless move to ensure I could never reclaim my place. The finality of it all was suffocating. I plunged into a profound, suffocating grief. It wasn't just losing my father. It was mourning the living loss of a man who was still breathing but no longer recognized me. The family I had believed was unconditional, the love I had always trusted, had vanished. I cried until I had no tears left, a raw, aching despair that settled deep in my bones. The silence in my life, where his love once resonated, was deafening. My identity crisis deepened. Who was I, if not my father's cherished daughter? My entire past felt rewritten, every memory with him now tainted by this betrayal. My future, once secure and filled with family gatherings and shared holidays, was systematically dismantled, leaving only a vast, empty space. I felt like a stranger in my own skin, a ghost of the person I once was, haunted by the life that had been stolen from me. The shocking disownment was formalized through a new will, confirmed by another quiet conversation I overheard. My name was erased, replaced entirely by Evelyn and her child. It was a public declaration of my non-existence in their lives, a final, definitive cut. I was utterly devastated, adrift in a world that no longer had a place for me. But as the despair threatened to consume me, a new, colder emotion began to stir. A desire for justice, a quiet vow that this could not be the end of my story. I would find a way to reclaim my narrative, no matter the cost. The days after my disownment were a heavy blur. Each morning, I woke with a deep ache in my chest, a hollowness where my father's love used to be. The grief was sharp, like a constant physical pain. I felt lost, adrift, as if the ground beneath my feet had vanished. My mind replayed his words, his cold eyes, over and over. I missed the man he was, the father I had, more than words could say. It was a mourning for a living ghost. A friend gently suggested therapy. I was hesitant, but the pain was too much to bear alone. In a quiet room, I began to speak, slowly, haltingly at first. I talked about the gaslighting, the constant twisting of my reality, the slow erosion of my father's trust. It was hard, tearing open old wounds, but each word spoken felt like a small weight lifted. I started to understand that what happened to me was a form of abuse, not a failing on my part. This was the first step towards healing. Once I could breathe again, a new thought took root, my stolen legacy. I couldn't just let it go. I reached out to a lawyer, a distant family contact, to explore my options. I wanted to understand if there was any legal recourse, any way to expose Evelyn's actions, or if I could reclaim what was rightfully mine. The conversations were complex, filled with legal terms, but I listened carefully, a flicker of hope beginning to stir within me. It wasn't about the money, but about the principle, about the truth. I started to cautiously share my story, piece by piece, with a few trusted friends. It was terrifying, fearing their judgment, fearing they might think I was crazy. But their reactions were a balm to my soul. They listened, they believed me, and they offered validation. "That's awful, Alina," one friend said, her voice filled with empathy. "You didn't deserve any of that." Their belief in me was a lifeline, helping me reclaim my own narrative from the lies Evelyn had woven. Building a new life felt like climbing a mountain. Every decision, every plan, now had to be made without the foundation of my old family. I had to redefine who I was, not as my father's daughter, but as Alina, a person with her own strength and resilience. It was lonely sometimes, but also liberating. I started small, focusing on my work, my interests, and the true connections I had. I was slowly, painstakingly creating a new identity, one that was truly my own. Evelyn's smear campaigns continued. I heard whispers, distorted versions of events, all designed to paint me as unstable or vindictive. My father, still under her spell, sometimes repeated these false narratives. At first, it stung, but with time, I learned to navigate and ultimately ignore it. Their words no longer had the power to hurt me. I understood it was a reflection of their manipulation, not my reality. I focused on my own peace, letting their noise fade into the background. Then, a surprising connection emerged. While researching old family records for my lawyer, I stumbled upon a small, obscure news clipping from years ago. It mentioned a property dispute Evelyn was involved in before she met my father, a case where she had allegedly forged documents to gain control of land. It was a minor detail, easily overlooked, but it hinted at a pattern, a past misdeed that could expose her true nature. My heart pounded. This was more than just a coincidence. The discovery solidified something within me. This wasn't just about my father anymore, or even just my stolen legacy. Evelyn was a danger, a manipulator who would stop at nothing. I made a conscious decision to pursue justice, not for vengeance, but to reclaim my truth and to prevent her from harming others, from destroying other families. It was a quiet vow, a deep resolve that settled in my bones. I had to expose her for everyone's sake. Months later, I saw my father and Evelyn at a public event. My heart still twisted, but I felt a new strength. I approached them calmly, my voice steady. I articulated Evelyn's manipulation, not as an accusation, but as a statement of fact, citing specific instances. My father looked confused, then dismissive. He still remained in denial, his belief in Evelyn unshaken. It was painful to see, but I realized his recognition was no longer my goal. Standing there, watching him turn away, I felt a strange peace. True justice, I realized, might not come from my father's recognition, or even from Evelyn facing legal consequences. It would come from my own healing, from reclaiming my narrative, and from the truth being known by those who mattered, by those who believed me. My life had been systematically dismantled, but I was putting the pieces back together, stronger than before. And the information I had found about Evelyn's past felt like a key, hinting at a path that could finally bring everything into the light, not for his sake, but for mine and for others who might follow. After all the heartache, a quiet realization settled within me. I looked at myself not with pity, but with a newfound respect. I had endured so much, faced such profound betrayal, and yet I was still standing. This wasn't the end. It was a new beginning. I decided with a firm resolve to channel all my energy into rebuilding my life, not for anyone else, but purely for myself. It was a conscious choice to embrace my own strength and resilience, one day at a time, to create a future that was truly mine. The path to healing was long and often painful, but I walked it with determination. Therapy became my sanctuary, a place where I could unpack the heavy layers of grief and trauma. I allowed myself to mourn the loss of my father, the family I once cherished, and the future that had been stolen. Slowly, painstakingly, the sharp edges of despair began to soften. I learned to process the profound sadness, not by pushing it away, but by acknowledging it, and in doing so, I found a quiet, steady peace beginning to bloom within me. As I healed, a powerful urge emerged to share my story. I started cautiously, with trusted friends, then extended to small community gatherings and online forums. It was terrifying at first, but each word spoken chipped away at the silence that had once defined my pain. Others, who had experienced similar parental alienation, reached out, their own struggles mirroring mine. Offering solace and strength to them, letting them know they were not alone, became a profound source of purpose. My voice, once silenced and dismissed, was now a beacon of hope for others. Years gently folded into each other. I occasionally saw Evelyn and her child from a distance, perhaps at a community event or a park. I couldn't help but observe the child, who often seemed quiet, almost reserved. Evelyn's subtle gestures, her way of speaking, her quick glances at the child, stirred a familiar unease within me. It was a chilling echo of her past behavior with my father, a quiet confirmation that her manipulative patterns were deeply ingrained. It was a stark reminder of the cyclical nature of her influence, a pattern I was now safely outside of. The relentless ache for my father's love, once a constant companion, finally began to recede. I had fought so hard, pleaded so desperately for his recognition. But now, a profound acceptance settled over me. I understood that his choice was his own, shaped by Evelyn's insidious influence, and it was not a reflection of my worth. I no longer needed his validation to define me, nor his love to feel complete. This quiet letting go was not defeat, but a liberation, a deeply personal victory that brought an unexpected sense of peace. The void left by my biological family's betrayal was slowly, beautifully, filled by a new kind of family. My steadfast friends became my chosen kin, offering unwavering support, laughter, and understanding. We built new traditions, celebrated milestones, and navigated challenges together. I also found incredible mentors who guided me, believed in my potential, and helped me grow. These healthy, affirming relationships became the true foundation of my life, showing me what unconditional love and genuine connection truly felt like, a stark contrast to the manipulation I had endured. I poured my heart and soul into my work, into my passions, into every aspect of my new life. It wasn't about grand gestures or public recognition, but about quiet, personal triumph. Slowly, steadily, success began to bloom in unexpected ways. I found deep joy in my accomplishments, in the simple beauty of my days, and in the happiness I meticulously built for myself. It was a profound satisfaction, knowing that despite the immense pain Evelyn had inflicted, I had not only survived but thrived, creating a life rich with purpose and contentment. The past, with its deep wounds and profound betrayals, remained a part of my story. It was a scar, a reminder of the journey I had endured, but it no longer defined me. The manipulation, the gaslighting, the disownment these experiences had shaped me, but they did not limit my future. I carried the lessons learned, the resilience forged in the fire of adversity, but I walked forward, unburdened by the need for external validation. My future stretched before me, vast and open, free from the shadows of Evelyn's influence. My ultimate form of justice wasn't found in legal battles or public accusations. It was found in living authentically, in thriving on my own terms. Evelyn had systematically tried to erase me, to dismantle my identity and future. But here I was, stronger, happier, and more whole than ever before. Every step forward, every personal victory, every moment of genuine joy was a quiet, powerful nullification of her attempts to diminish me. Her lies had failed. My vibrant, independent life was the most profound vindication, a testament to my unbreakable spirit. I often found myself standing on a high hill, looking out at the vast, peaceful landscape stretching before me. In those moments, a profound sense of closure washed over me. I finally understood the true outcome of my long, agonizing battle. I had lost the fight for my father's love, the one he so readily gave away to Evelyn and her fabricated reality. But in that very loss, I had won something infinitely more precious: the war for my own soul, my own identity, and my own future. I was free, whole, and ready for whatever lay ahead, finally at peace.